We are one day away from deciding which direction this country is going to go. Down the toilet with Kamala or onward and upwards with a great American mega comeback. The choice is ours, and the show starts now. We are just one day away from arguably the most important election day, certainly of my lifetime. The stakes have never been higher, and the closing arguments from either candidate really could not be more different. Kamala has $1 billion in the bank, I'm sure from all of the middle-class families in Hollywood who have donated to her campaign, and she's using that money to bring out the celebrities on her behalf because nothing says you care about the little guy better than J-Lo crying on a stage or Cardi B trying to come up with an unaided original thought.
Trump says he's going to protect women whether they like it or not. Well, if his definition of protection is not the freedom of choice, if his definition of protection is making sure our daughters have fewer rights than our mothers, then I don't want it! I don't want it. I don't want it.
Well, in case it wasn't obvious, the script written for Cardi didn't load properly in the teleprompter. She had to get the cell phone. And similar to Kamala herself, Cardi doesn't know how to convince people Kamala is the right choice without someone else writing it out for her. And look, I don't think Cardi is dumb. I really don't. I think she's smarter than Kamala, if I'm being totally honest with you. But I do think, given what she said about Biden-Harris leadership just last year, it's pretty obvious her newfound support for Kamala is fake as hell. I much prefer the real Cardi.
I don't give a I'm not endorsing no presidents no more. Because how is there a $100 million budget cut in New York City for schools, library, police safety, and sanitation? Yeah, Joe Biden's talking about, like, yeah, we could fund two wars. We could fund two wars. Talking about we don't got it, but we got it. Like, we're the greatest nation. No, we're not. We're going through some now. Like, say it. We really going through, we really are now.
The real Cardi is just like us, the garbage Trump supporters. The real Cardi knows everyday goods are too expensive and knows that funding endless wars while our own country suffers is BS. But Cardi is far from the worst surrogate Kamala has on her team. Here's Tim Walz seemingly implying Elon Musk is gay.
If you're a billionaire, Elon Musk, for example, say, that gay got it. Michigan knows that word.
And it gets worse. They, for whatever reason, opened Biden's basement again, and this is what came out.
But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
The joy is gone, folks. But Republicans, on the other hand, have a lot to be joyful about. Cautiously, of course. I don't really care about the polls. I care about the early voting numbers. And for the first time, the GOP is putting big numbers on the board. Now that we have finally understood that we must play the game, even if it took some kicking and screaming to get us there, I am much more confident in what's going to happen tomorrow night. Joining me now, hopefully with the same cautious optimism, is former Georgia Congressman Doug Collins. Doug, it's great to have you. And I have to ask you right out the gate, how are you feeling about tomorrow?
I'm feeling good about tomorrow. I think it's looking good. As you just said, the early numbers are great. And, you know, look, Election Day has always been a Republican turnout day. So I'm looking forward to that actually happening, looking forward to seeing this go. You know, somebody's actually said, is it going to be close? Yes. That's why I'm saying everybody needs to get out. Everybody's got to get out and vote because, you know, but if I was to pick, if you're, you know, somebody asked me the other day, they said, would you rather be? I said, I'd much rather be Donald Trump in this scenario than Harris. Harris has a large wall to climb to get over the deficit that Republicans have put them in by coming out early and voting.
How's Georgia looking? Because, you know, Georgia used to be reliably red, and then 2020 threw everyone for a loop. Some folks were worried early on that Kamala might be able to just flip that state decidedly, but the early voting numbers look good for Republicans. Governor Brian Kemp has been a great asset and ally to Donald Trump and his campaign. But how are you truly feeling about it on the ground in Georgia? What are you seeing in terms of yard signs? What are you hearing in terms of speaking to maybe undecided or fence voters? Where is the energy in Georgia?
The energy in Georgia is clearly with Donald Trump. I mean, the Harris team has been in, Walz has been in. I mean, they have to bring people with them. They have to bring Bruce Springsteen. They have to bring somebody with them to generate any kind of excitement. But here, let's dig down for just a second. Why do I think it's doing well for Trump in Georgia? In the early vote so far, the turnout among African Americans is lower than it has to be for the Democrats to feel comfortable about winning. They just aren't showing up. Right now, the early vote shows about 26.7 to 27% of the total vote. Normally, in a Democrat-Republican race, for the Democrat to have a chance in Georgia, they got to get up closer to 30%. They're nowhere close to that. Clayton County, one of the bluest counties in the entire country, while the rest of Georgia is voting off the chart, 56, 60, 70, even 80% of total registered voters.
You're frozen on me, Doug. There we go.
There we go.
There we go. So I want to get that last part because you froze, but it was a very important point that you made about the county that's going to be impactful. You're saying lower turnout than expected, and that could make the difference.
Yeah, Clayton County, and it's a solid blue county. We're talking about an 80 to 85% blue county, is 15 to 20 points below the early voting numbers of all the other counties in the state almost. And that is a real problem for them because they have to have a closer to 30% African-American turnout total for the state for Democrats to win.
What is the main issue in Georgia? Is it the economy like everywhere else? Is it immigration due to what happened to Lake and Riley, due to the influx of illegal migrants? What would you say is the issue that's getting not only Trump supporters out, but just getting people out to early vote? Like, what are they mainly focused on in your state?
I'd almost like to say, Tommy, yes, because it's an either or. You got the economy and inflation, and you have immigration. We're seeing it at the pocketbook in our farms. We're seeing it in our homes. We're seeing it in diesel prices, and people are being affected by that of all races and all backgrounds and all political parties. But I think immigration has also had a big part here. I mean, we just had Lake and Riley earlier, but just this past week, we had a murder of a young woman by an illegal immigrant just 20 miles north of my home in Habersham County. These are the kind of things that they're seeing on their news all the time. And the fentanyl issue, drug issue, and their safety is also playing a part. They're trying to play the women's issue, the reproductive issue. They're trying to play the normal national card. It's just not playing because at the end of the day, people are not happy with where the economy is. And if you look at right track, wrong track in Georgia, people are decidedly saying we're on the wrong track. How do you turn the page from that? You don't go back to the same book. You find a new book, and that's actually turning the page.
Right. Well, and a lot of people do want to go back, but they want to go back to Donald Trump's presidency before COVID, of course. That's when things were looking good. And Kamala trying to brand herself as this change candidate is really amazing to me. But you brought up immigration. Now, everything is super tense right now. We're all really anxious. But I want to bring a little bit of, in my opinion, some comedy to this. So there are some Kamala Harris supporters that had the Harris Walls signs in their yards. Well, someone had maybe the brilliant idea of making sure they were aware of maybe what they were potentially voting for, maybe what they were signing up for, maybe taking on some migrants because they're so loving and tolerant of illegal immigration. I want to play this clip because I think it's just pure comedy.
I put a lawn sign in my front yard, and I don't think I should be subjected to these fraudulent mailers.
When this 50-year-old Shrewsbury woman put up a Harris Wall sign in front of her home, she just wanted to show her support. She never imagined she would be subjected to a campaign dirty trick.
It really creeped me out.
She was dismayed when the mail arrived this week and she received this postcard. It purports to be from the Harris campaign, thanking her for putting up a sign and alerting her a family from Nicaragua would be moving into her home.
That's when I realized it was an obvious attempt to try to either scare me or rage bait me and make me upset.
Doug, why is she scared? She wants an open border. Why would she not want to welcome an unknown Nicaraguan family into her home? I am perplexed.
I'm shocked, down here from the South. I mean, we're just shocked, bless her heart. I mean, that is just, the thing about it is, though, we've disconnected disconnected the policies from the actual reality. We've disconnected what Harris actually stands for, what she actually believes, and they just don't want to believe it. They believe that there's this bumper pad mentality of politics, that it'll only be in the middle, and it may be a little bit more what we like or a little bit less, but it's not going to vastly change us. The open border situation has changed all that. They cannot say anymore. I'm in New York City, and I just went by the Roosevelt Hotel, a grand hotel used to be, and now it's just run down. That's where they're keeping the migrants. They're farming them out now. This is real in places like New York City, but it's also real in Atlanta. It's real in Gainesville. It's real in Nashville. It's real everywhere. Why? Because an open border is in all 8 states. All the lower 48 have this happening now. So, again, I understand what she is sort of saying. Well, are you trying to frighten me? No, there's a reality to your politics. But Tommy, you remember the Martha's Vineyard crowd? I've never seen people so excited. It almost reminded me of parents putting kids on the bus to go to camp at the beginning of summer. They said, "Oh, we love you. Here, bye. Here's the bus," and they just run them onto the bus. It was just hilarious.
I just think that this needs to happen more. I think that the people that vote for these policies, they need to see these policies up close and personal. It's almost becoming unavoidable now. Illegal immigration is smacking everybody in the face, even here in a red state, which actually really burns my behind because Tennessee is more red than even Georgia. And we've still got illegal immigrants everywhere. And it's like, how does this possibly happen to a state that says we don't want this? We got to make sure that we're electing majorities in both houses as well, because, we've got to end this. Donald Trump can't do it on his own, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse. There's going to be a gender gap. We know this. Kamala is getting more support from women. Donald Trump, obviously, more support from men. But I want to call your attention to another Doug, in my opinion, a lesser of a Doug, who thinks he's telling this story about how somebody that he knows stopped watching UFC and listening to podcasts, and suddenly they were going to vote for Kamala Harris. I don't think this ever happened, but let's listen to Doug explain.
Okay, so first, what I talk to young men about who might be taken by the, fun side of Donald Trump, such as it is, the dancing, the going to the wrestling matches, going on the podcast, and trying to portray himself as someone who he really is. And I think Cardi B called this out and said it's just all a hustle. And so what I'm trying to implore young men in particular to do the research. He's not your friend. The policies that he's talking about will not help them in the economy. The policies that he's talking about have nothing to do with them. So they might think he's great, think he's cool, but I was at an event somewhere and I was talking to a mom of a 18-year-old who was nervous and worried that he and his friends were all kind of taken in by this part of Trump. And she just said, please, just go online, watch him, watch the speeches, listen to what he's saying, not the podcasts, not him at the wrestling matches or the UFC, the football game. Just listen to his speeches, watch him, and then look at her and watch her. And he came back and said, oh my goodness, Mom, I'm voting for Harris.
First of all, that never happened. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say it never happened. But the wrestling matches, Donald Trump had those wrestling matches, also known as UFC, for those who are actually aware of what it is. But, furthermore, if this is an 18-year-old kid, this imaginary kid, I would be concerned that I was going to get signed up to go fight one of Kamala's endless wars alongside Liz Cheney. But, maybe in this imaginary tale, anything can happen.
Well, I mean, when you've got nothing to sell, you have to sell anything. And I think that's the problem that the Doug is trying to sell here, and that he can't sell a policy. You notice he never came up with anything that Harris was going to do for that age group. He never came up with anything about actually something that's actually constitutional or actually could get passed. All they can point to is the past 3.5 years in which this demographic, this age group going into college or getting out of college is finding the job market harder to get into. They're finding their paychecks are not going as far. They're finding that it costs more to put gas in the car, diesel in the truck, however you want to look at it. And they're not believing it. And I think that's the problem. It's not a matter of Donald Trump going to a UFC fight. It's not a matter of Donald Trump going on Joe Rogan. It's not a matter of all this. They're a matter of what the problem is. The Democrats are trying to sell something that people can see with their own eyes are not actually happening. And again, this idea that you put them side by side. I would actually encourage any person to do that. Put up what Donald Trump has actually said about foreign affairs and wars and our economy and how we're to get back in place, and then compare the lack of specificity from the Harris campaign, which has done nothing except had their own Democrats. When she laid out her economic policy, Democrats screamed that it wouldn't work.
I want to ask you too, just for those folks out there that don't follow this closely, here is my one and only concern, is that there are folks out there when Kamala says, you know what, your groceries are high because the grocery stores are gouging you, and I will pass a ban on price gouging, so your prices are going to go down at the grocery store. Now, you and I hear that, and first of all, our first thought is, well, that's communist. But second of all, we know that that's actually not going to fix the problem anyway, because grocery store margins are actually fairly low. But I feel that there are some people out there, maybe the Cardi B's of the world, who hear Kamala say, I will solve your problems, I will make sure that the corporations don't gouge you anymore, and they might fall for it. And they might think, well, she's got a real solution to my problems. Do you think that there are voters out there that will be swayed by that kind of narrative?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. I mean, I'm not one to blow sunshine. There will be, because it's a classic economic argument. When the Democrats have trouble with the race argument, or everything's a racist, or everything's against them, then they go to the class warfare. Then they go to, if somebody else is your problem, and it goes back, to old movies. I mean, liberals used to understand this. You remember what was the movie with, I think it was Michael Douglas, the American president? You remember he got up there and he said, and he had a great line in his speech, and liberals now should actually go back and look at it. He said, all they want to do is tell you who to be afraid of and be afraid of it. And this is exactly the Harris campaign plan. You need to be afraid of big corporations. You need to be afraid of big oil. You need to be afraid of Donald Trump. You need to be afraid of billionaires. You need to be afraid of, just fill in the blank. And unfortunately, people are looking for someone to blame for their problems. They don't want to accept that in my life there are issues that have been affected to me that I could either change, or I have a government that is lying to me, which is what the Harris-Biden administration is doing. And they just want to blame somebody else. This is a tale as old as time, but we've got to continue to force the issue to say, look, there are real issues here, but it's not what you're being told.
Right. And, I often am one of those people that I listen to Donald Trump speak, and I listen to his rallies. And there are times, in all honesty, where I'm like, just you didn't need to say that. You just don't say it. Please just don't say it, because there are people that will clutch their pearls and they will take it out of context. And I think maybe it's wearing off because people have grown accustomed to them taking him out of context and mincing his words in a way that's unflattering. But then there are times where he just says things that maybe he probably shouldn't have. I don't know if it was the rally in Georgia yesterday. There's been so many, but I think it might have been. He made a comment about the press and him having bulletproof glass. And I'm like, just don't give it to him. But then to me, it's so egregious when they take his comments, particularly the ones about Liz Cheney, and the way that the media ran with this. For folks that haven't heard the full comments, I want to play them because I think it's so important. The media is not our friend here. Let's take a listen.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face. They're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. She always wanted to go to war with people.
First of all, I find it really interesting that lifting Liz Cheney on a pedestal is the new Democrat MO. Weird. But some of these comments, do you think that there are people that will hear that soundbite on other networks and they will think, oh boy, Donald Trump said that?
Yep. I literally just got off an interview and this was on Fox News, where another Democrat actually made the statement again. And this was unfortunate because this is actually a veteran who said it. And they made the comment that, well, he said that he wanted to shoot Liz Cheney. No, he didn't. And this is somebody who served in the military for myself. I've been in the Air Force Reserve for 23 years, colonel in the Air Force. I've been to Iraq. I've been to those wars. I've been to the wars that Dick Cheney was, all this thing. Now, we can fight about the validity of those wars and what we need to do with terrorists around the world. But there is an issue here. That's not what he said. And it's time that the FCC, it's time that the Federal Elections Commission, it's time for people to stop being able to get away with editing things to a degree in which they're not recognizable. I take the 60 Minutes interview in which they take an answer that was not even given, and then they put that and rework it into what I will call a campaign ad. That's an in-kind contribution. And, Saturday Night Live is falling into that problem now. But yes, unfortunately, Tommy, there are people who listen to this. They only want to hear part of it. And look, sometimes that goes both ways. Republicans, conservatives, you got to listen to whole context too. And we've got to get back out of this I'm going to go tit for tat outrage, and we've got to go back to the facts. And the facts are we were better off under Donald Trump than we are under Biden-Harris.
What I think is interesting is that if you actually take what Kamala Harris says and you clip it and you make it shorter, she sounds better. If you let her just go and you play the full thing, she sounds worse. It's an interesting phenomenon. Before I do let you go, I have to ask you about another issue that might not be election related, but in some part it sort of is, because it's stirring a lot of outrage on social media, and myself included. I'm about to do my final thoughts on it. But have you heard of Peanut the Squirrel and the egregious government overreach? I am so mad about this. I know some people think that we're blowing out of proportion, but it just angers me to my core, and I just have to get your take on it. Have you been following this? And do you think that maybe it's symptomatic of a larger problem, bigger than a squirrel and a raccoon?
Yeah, I think it goes into it. I think it's a bigger problem, and I followed it enough to know that it's sickening to me. It goes into a culture that, frankly, Tom, we need to talk about after the election, and we need to talk about it with Congress on both sides. We are overregulated, overcriminalized, and classified in this country. We have got to get back to where we have government taking care of people, government keeping the country safe, instead of worrying about whistleblowers who are worried about a squirrel living in some guy's house. I wish, and I'm not making light of this because I don't want to, but this is somebody who had taken in the squirrel, kept up the squirrel became a phenomenon. I may have squirrels in my attic. I can't get the government to come kill it for me. This is stupid. And yet to take that we had government had time to go do this. Think about that right there. In the midst of all the immigrant problems, all the other problems we got in this country, they actually took the time to go do this. Give me a break. It's
so wild to me because New York is a sanctuary state, basically. Yeah. So ICE can't communicate with law enforcement to get criminal aliens out of this country, but they can send a task force to raid someone's home in search of a squirrel. Like, if that doesn't just perfectly encapsulate everything that's wrong with big government, I don't know what does. I hope to talk to you very soon after this election. We can start working on vengeance for Peanut and also the list of grievances the American people have. We've got high hopes going into tomorrow. I always appreciate your optimism, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Look forward to it. Take care.
Thanks so much. Folks, on that note, to some, Peanut was just a squirrel, but what happened to him at the hands of big government is symptomatic of a much larger problem: justice for Peanut. It's time for final thoughts. I, like many of you, am outraged over what happened to social media star squirrel Peanut. So after reportedly receiving complaints from unnamed Karens regarding the rescue squirrel Peanut and the rescue raccoon Fred, the state of New York's Department of Environmental Conservation seized the two animals from owner Mark Longo's home and animal sanctuary, but not just seized, raided the freaking home like it was some kind of a drug den, and then euthanized both of those animals. I'm sick.
Peanut was the best thing that ever happened to us. And we got confirmation that they put him down. I want to continue to fight this fight as much as I can, but we need all of you to come together and help us. Please continue to help us raise money for the ongoing legal battles and for our nonprofit so we can keep Peanut's name alive. Thank you all.
Now, they have vowed to fight this in court tooth and nail, as they should. With all the problems in New York, all the gangbangers, all the thugs, all the illegal criminal aliens loitering around in the streets, the state targets a pet squirrel and a pet raccoon? You have got to be freaking kidding me. Well, according to Mark, Peanut's dad, at least 10 DEC officers raided his home, went through every nook and cranny before taking his beloved rescue pets and later killing them. And what was the excuse for euthanizing Fred and Peanut? To study their brains for rabies. This is sick, and I am personally furious. And I know some folks will say it's just a squirrel or it's just a raccoon, but this is much bigger than this. This is a perfect example and a gross example of government overreach. There are 300,000 plus migrant kids missing. There are thugs and felons and looters and rapists wandering the streets of New York as we speak. And the state raids an animal rescue, confiscates beloved pets, and kills them for no flippin' reason. That is what our tax dollars are going to, confiscating pet rescue squirrels. Justice for Peanut, justice for Fred, and justice for any American who has been kicked around by the almighty government. Enough is enough. Trump 2024. And those are my final thoughts. Please be sure to tune in tomorrow live at 1 p.m. Eastern for my Election Day hot takes. Also, catch full episodes of this show on Fox Nation whenever you like. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. From Nashville, God bless and take care. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click here and make sure you subscribe here so you never miss a beat. I'll be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.